this is you know, an important step as we start to plan out what we're going to do this year. So I'm going to just read through the people who are here just to make sure we've got all the attendees for minutes purposes. So David Friedman, that's me, Molly Cook, Sarah Blaylock, LaDonna Henson, Lori Kittner, Michelle Velez, Jasmine, and Pat Mayer. Did I miss anybody? Great, thank you. If I missed anybody, or if anybody joins, I can just pop into the chat. So what we're going to talk about today is welcome and introductions. Then we're going to talk a little bit about success stories, and I'll explain that more as we get into that section of the presentation. Talk briefly about our last meeting, which was in October. And then I'd like us to get into the webinar for the spring that we've talked about, and trying to really nail down what the topic is, and therefore what's appropriate speakers would be and structure for that would be. And then that's probably what we'll do for most of the time. And then the way the career pathways team works, there are 3 subgroups. Each subgroup sort of sponsors one of the quarterly meetings of the year. And then we have one that's sort of a annual recap meeting. So we've been tentatively assigned the June 2023 quarterly meeting. So we'll spend a little bit of time starting to think about location and speakers for that. And then just next steps for the rest of the year, and sort of a structure for how we're going forward. Sound good? Great. So one of the things that I think is really important for us to remember as we work on this, we can get kind of caught up in programming and policy and that kind of thing in these meetings. I think it's really important that we remember that this, the point of this is actually to help people with disabilities find long-term sustainable employment. And so really important that I think we spend a few minutes, you know, every time we get together, hearing stories about people's successes and you know, how they've been able to overcome those, and what the workforce system working collaboratively has been able to do in order to help people be successful long-term. So what I'd like to do is start every meeting here with a success story, just a story about someone that we work with or that's in our programs, and talk a little bit about what the system has meant and has done for them. So to start that off, I'll give the first one, and then just, you know, fair warning, the next slide asks people to sign up themselves for giving these in the future. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about a gentleman that works at Autonomy Works. His name's Barry, and I don't know how many of you know Autonomy Works. It's a company I founded 10 years ago. We have I have a son who has autism, and was really struggling to find a job, and so I started the company to try to create jobs for people with autism. We have about 70 employees now, 55 or so of them with disabilities. And I could tell you my son's story. It's one of my favorites, but I will actually choose somebody else. This is a gentleman named Barry. Barry went to high school in Melrose Park, and after high school did not go to transition, but really started looking for a job and wasn't able to find anything, and spent his time working. His parents had a grocery store, sort of Filipino grocery store, and so he worked there all the time. But at the same time, he was connected with DRS. So this is back like 2013, 2014. He was connected with DRS, and we were working closely with John Marchiero and some of the other folks at DRS to try to figure out how we could collaborate to identify people to come work at Autonomy Works, as we were really just starting the business and growing. And Barry was one of the people that was referred to us by DRS. And so at about the same time, DRS had given us some funding to create a training program. So we had created this training program, and Barry was one of the first people to go through the training program. And you know, when he first started working with us, he had you know, I think a lot of really good skills, but also some challenges sort of being successful in the workplace, primarily around like asking questions and being able to communicate. One when he got stuck on things and being able to explain what he was working on. So we work with him over time, and he has consistently added hours over the last 10 years, and he's working for all practical purposes full-time, 36 to 40 hours, and is now the lead person on a number of our projects. So he was the lead on one, and now he's shifted over to other, and he's sort of the lead person on a number of those projects. We call them peer experts, and so they're the people that know the work well enough that they can help their peers when their peers get stuck, and train new people when they come onto that. So he's also picked up a bunch of office responsibilities. So he opens the office every morning. So he's here every morning at 7:30. He opens the office, gets everything set up for people to get started in the day before his day begins. But as importantly, I think, as what he's been able to do at work, Barry got married. He had been living with his parents for a long time. He's bought bought his own car since he moved out of his parents' house. He and his wife have bought a townhouse in Lombard, and off and running on his life. So I think it's really great how sort of what we can do together to sort of start people up at the beginning with a little bit of training and a little bit of opportunity, and then how they can build skills and be able to do not just work, but how work then sort of gives them both the confidence and the skills to be able to go off and do all sorts of different things in their life, which I think is really why we're all here. So that's Barry. He's great. So hopefully you'll get to meet him sometime. So these are sort of our tentatively scheduled meetings for the rest of the year, and I would love for other people to sort of volunteer to give just a story, just not, we don't need slides, we don't need pictures or anything, but just sort of a little overview of who the person is and how they've been successful through the support of the workforce system. Who's up for going? I'm going to go down. Do I have to call on people? Call on people. Michelle, when would you like to do this?
Okay. I could do the next meeting. I probably won't go on as long. I do have, a story I can tell, but.
That's great. All right, LaDonna, you don't have to go in order. You can pick another month if you prefer.
This is LaDonna. I could do like the May, July. We got a lot going on right now, so by then I'll be.
Have some stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Why don't I take August? I'll take August. That way we don't have two DRS and too many DRS like right in a row.
Yeah. Thanks, Lori. Jasmine, Pat, any?
April's good for me.
You say April?
Yes.
Great.
Dave and group, sorry, but I generally don't work with open cases in DHS. I do more private work, so sorry.
Okay,
but that was a outstanding success story with Barry, Dave.
It's been really great to see over the last 8 or 10 years how he's done. But that's great, Pat. Cool. I think that's well, there are a couple of other people in the group, and we'll reach out to fill these things in. But we got the next couple of months taken care of. So thank you guys for stepping up on that. Great. Just a quick review as we start to turn now to talk about the webinar that we want to give, just to make sure we're thinking about that in the context of our charges as a group. So our primary charge is to provide strategies and recommendations for eliminating barriers to ongoing employment. So I think the key thing we've talked a lot about is about barriers and making sure that when we do our work, that we're focused on identifying the barriers and sort of specifically and looking at ways to eliminate those. The second thing I think is really important in this thing is ongoing employment. So looking beyond sort of job placement, but to the point of starting to think about long-term success of people in employment. Three things: service integration. So making sure that we are looking for places where collaboration has been successful and trying to take those collaboration successes and share them broadly around the state. Aligning this with the career pathways architecture that the Department of Labor and the U.S. Department of Labor, and then the DCEO and the other workforce groups in Illinois are starting to put in place, so that we are introducing people with disabilities into programs that are aligned with where money's being spent and skills are being built. And the last is trying to help everybody just get a little better every week. So in October 12th, we talked about the workforce webinar that we had given back earlier in October about what worked and what didn't work, and try to reach some conclusions. So as we go forward, we can build on what we've learned, and starting to look now at this next webinar, and then starting to think, which we're going to continue today, and hopefully today we had some sort of brainstorming last time, but today we're going to try to lock down a little bit the webinar. Great. So the webinar, so we gave a webinar back in the fall, and we at the time decided to give another webinar here in the winter sometime. We wanted the focus, and most of the attendees at our webinar back in October were people within the workforce system, whether there was a community providers or at state agencies. And we wanted to try to come up with a topic that we felt could be more broadly relevant to businesses, and then to really try to recruit and communicate to businesses about this upcoming webinar. And so we identified a handful of topics that we thought might be interesting to a business audience. And I guess these were sort of the three that we had, or the 3 to 5 we had identified as potential topics. So corporate culture, which is obviously, how do you create an inclusive culture that enables people, that helps both in the hiring process, as well as helping people be successful when they join the company. Individualized support. So how do you offer support to individuals with disabilities when they are working for your company? Universal design. So this is, I think, an interesting concept around, how do you design systems in the biggest sense that word, organization structure, technology, tools, working systems, so that they work best for people with disabilities, as well as for the broader employee population. Because I think there's been a lot of findings where designs that are initially made for non-traditional employees, not just people with disabilities, but any other kind of non-traditional employee, actually end up being valuable and beneficial for the entire work population. And so helping people understand how to think about that. The fourth was more of a case study. So 3 different employers and employees. So kind of the idea would be to have an employer and an employee talking about their journeys and their successes and some of the barriers that they've had to overcome. What I think people found interesting about this in particular was the idea of sort of small, medium, and large employers, so that we would be able to show some variety in terms of because the situations are different depending on the resources you have and the organization that you're in. And the last would be, that last idea was around accommodations. accommodations are kind of I think a fear point, if you will, for businesses. They know that they have to offer accommodations. They don't know what accommodations are. They don't know what that costs. They don't know how to offer it and how to support people. And so since this seems to be a barrier or a concern for lots of businesses, that if we could address it, it might actually be something that would lower some barriers for people by giving them more confidence and less fear about accommodations. So those were the 5 topics, I guess, looking for input from people on which of these they think would be most impactful and most interesting, again, to a primarily business audience.
And
Go ahead, Linda. Go ahead, Pat.
Dave and group, pardon me if I was interrupting someone. I think corporate culture is very interesting and permeates the entire organization clearly. And I think this would be a topic that would be insightful for any companies to understand that, in my mind, if you don't develop a welcoming culture for everyone, it's somewhat of a cancerous situation for everyone. So I just find the topic really with a lot of depth and worthy of a webinar.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Pat. Right. We've, I've talked about this before. To some extent, if you don't have a corporate culture that is open to differences, then sort of none of these other 4 things really matter. Right? You're not going to do universal design. You're not going to offer supports. You're not going to make accommodations. So I think that that's a good observation there. Other thoughts in terms of things that would be interesting? Yeah, Jasmine.
Hi, I think accommodations could be a really cool thing to talk about. Like you mentioned, it can be kind of intimidating for employers, but I think if they're educated about what the options are, and then learning, it also provides information about different types of disabilities, because a lot of times you think, is it accessible? You think about persons who are in a wheelchair, but there's, a number of different types of disability. People could be visually impaired or hearing impaired, or I dare not try to list them all. Dare not try to list them all. But I think understanding the types of tools that are available could be helpful. And one employer that comes to mind, everybody knows the Lighthouse. They employ lots of persons with disabilities. My first cousin, she's in a wheelchair, and she's been at the Lighthouse working on the call center contract with the toll for about 6 years now. But she just mentions the different types of people she works with and the different types of things that are available for them to be able to successfully do their job. So I think they'd be cool. And of course there, maybe others, but just understanding what technology is available, and even down to something as simple as how much it costs to turn writing into Braille. like if people are visually impaired and they're thinking, well, all of our manuals are in writing, maybe perhaps it may not be, that expensive to make it Braille. So just giving them, some ideas. And lastly, on that, thinking about ways to incorporate it into the onboarding, because I think that persons with disabilities and even people with any type of barrier to employment can feel like they want to hide it more so in the application process and at the beginning of the job, because they don't want to feel like I don't want them to rescind the offer or think I'm going to be a burden. So if in the onboarding, we can have like some surveys and questionnaires, kind of with that same paperwork where you talk about your demographics, that might be helpful, because there's probably lots of employees who may also benefit from some accommodations. So then it's not just an investment in one or two or a small group of employees, but it's really an overall investment to make everybody more productive, more comfortable, more efficient. So yeah, that one resonates with me the most. And I think it is tied to corporate culture. Of course, that's a great suggestion as well.
Other thoughts or perspectives from Lori?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I really like the universal design and the accommodations one, and we could even do like a slide or two on universal design when we have that accommodation conversation. And that, I really, like you were saying, David, that is a topic that a lot of employers are very, very nervous about. Frightened of, because they don't want to have to make a huge investment. And sometimes it's just as easy as making a checklist or letting somebody use an alarm on their phone instead of just, they won't return from their break if they don't have an alarm. So let's let them use their phone for those 15 minutes, whatever it is. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be costly in what they think of an accommodation. Like Jasmine was saying, sometimes they're thinking about, oh, we're going to have to remodel to make ramps and this and that. Well, it's so much more than that. Yes, that is included, but there's so much more, and it's so much easier to accommodate so many different disabilities. So I think if we demystify it a little bit and, like I said, maybe add in a little piece about universal design, it becomes much more concrete and understandable for folks.
Great, absolutely. Other thoughts? Any other perspectives on this?
I just have one more. I don't want to overdo it, but just one more to kind of add to the universal design. You wonder if there is a assessment or some tool that we could provide employers if they wanted to kind of internally look at how healthy are we as an organization that supports persons with disabilities. And perhaps they could look at how many employees they have, the things, oh, nice. Molly Cook is saying she has some tools. But that's kind of what immediately came to mind when Lori was speaking. Just, you wonder if there's a way that an employer could have an objective tool to kind of assess their health and then provide some suggestions for how they could set goals. Maybe they're looking and they don't have anyone on staff, or maybe only one person with a disability. Maybe they could set a goal for 5% or 10% of employees. So thank you.
Great, yeah, thank you, Jasmine. Other thoughts?
This is Michelle, Dave. I agree with accommodations for one, with some of the same thoughts that Jasmine had and that she mentioned, but I also thought about highlighting the 3 employers, just because I think that it'll give others the opportunity to see how other companies are incorporating and working with people with disabilities, maybe with disability hiring initiatives, different accommodations that they're providing for them, and accessibility options. Like I think I mentioned previously to Molly about Chicago Lighthouse also. And, the way that they work with accessibility, like JAWS, Zoom Text Fusion, and how they've already done programming so that the blind or visually impaired, will be able to do the same work as others with assistive technology.
Right, that's what I mean. I was thinking along those lines, Michelle, about whether, if we are gonna, because I think we've agreed in the past, and I think from our last session we would say this, like having employers, speak as part of this is really, really important. So particularly if we're going to be talking to an employer audience, having people that, that they feel like they can connect with better, I think is really, has more credibility. So maybe if we think about this as probably having 3 employers, but maybe, the idea that's here is employers and employees with disabilities. If we're going to get into some stuff that's a little more technical, maybe we just want the, we don't necessarily have to have it's less the success stories and more kind of the tools and approaches that might, I just want to make sure we have enough time to get everything across, because Lighthouse could talk for an hour on what they've done, and I want to make sure. But I wonder if we could kind of think about, because the corporate culture feels to me is like another one of those things that's sort of a barrier to all of this. So I wonder if we looked at employers that came with a couple of different perspectives. I'm trying to see if we can combine them, but that may not work out. That I'm trying to think if there's a way to combine sort of, because the corporate culture is just it's like the first thing. Like if you don't have that, you don't get anywhere on it. I'm trying to think about a way to combine some of the strategic stuff around the corporate culture, as well as some of the actually delivery stuff around the accommodations and universal design.
David, could we maybe do a series where it's like the entry level is the corporate culture and kind of shifting a business's or organization's mind towards this, and then go into like individual support or universal design, and then individual support with accommodations, and then maybe highlight employers in each of those steps?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great, because all of these things feel important. It feels hard to put them all into a single thing. So a series of at least 2, maybe 3. But I kind of like that idea of having a bigger story. It's not like, hey, here's a webinar on culture. It's like, here's a series of webinars on these different topics. And yeah, I think that could actually work pretty well, because it ties it together a little bit more than them just all feeling like one-off things and I think we would all agree like that it is a system of all sorts of things that require it. Yeah, why don't we try to look at that though? What do people think about that thought?
This is LaDonna, and I was sitting here thinking, how can we kind of do all of them, because they are all important, and I think businesses struggle with all of them, and how could we? So I think the series is good, and I think having employers speak to employers is something we should look at as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of it.
Yeah, and this is Lori. I think I like the idea of a series, and maybe we could do it in terms of like, this is myself, this is how I would order it. I would do highlighting like case studies in term and do like why hire just people with disabilities here, is it hard, is it easy, here are 3 success stories, small, medium, and large employer, and then then the next one do the corporate culture, as far as, you know, because like what you were saying, I agree with, if the culture doesn't foster hiring people with disabilities or, you know, multicultural, diverse populations, it's not going to happen. So then, you know, talk about the corporate culture and then get more into how do you do that with like a general discussion of accommodations and universal design, and then how to individualize that at the end. Like, you know, you really do need to use those assessments, and this is where you can get specific assessments, or, you know, how you encourage employees to disclose and request accommodations, you know, those types of things. That's my 2 cents. But you know, these are like topics that are near and dear to my heart. So I could listen to this the whole time, and you know, or you know, and would be very happy. So the more audience we can get, and the more times we can show up and provide information, I think it's better for the employers and the you know, our constituents.
Yeah. I wonder if we do the small, medium, large, if we could get them to focus on culture and sort of leadership for how they sort of created the initiatives and the change in their organizations. I mean, that might be a place to start that gives that that small, medium, large thing a little bit more focus. And you know, people are interested in sort of leadership. I'm thinking of like business people, like, you know, leadership training, you know, how do I, you know, be a leader? And that might be sort of a thing that would be compelling for people, like sort of something more about like, hey, here are 3 employers going to come and talk about how they've created an inclusive culture in their organizations. And that might be a place to start. So to your point, you get kind of, people see successes, which is great. And then they also start to realize the importance of leadership and culture in that. And then we can get into sort of the specifics of accommodations and so forth in subsequent use. That could be what do people, any people's thoughts on that? Pat, you had some thoughts on corporate culture. What do you think about kind of going after a series here?
Yeah, I think that would be a great approach, Dave and Ruth. I trust me, I thought everyone articulated their interest very well, but in my mind, having a lot of experience in the private sector around this population, I know for a fact, at least in my experience, that unless the culture develops around being welcoming for all, it's not welcoming for any, meaning every historically marginalized group is at risk if the culture isn't embracing of equity, of diversity, of everyone contributing. And to Dave, to your point, I think that might bridge all of these topics and mesh them because certainly the group is right. you need accommodations for success. You need overall design of access for success, but all of that in my mind and experience is precursed by culture. So anyway, I'm supportive with whatever approach we take.
Great, great. Thank you, Pat. And so it sounds we're sort of coalescing around something that looks like a series of probably three webinars. The first one focus on corporate culture and with sort of case studies of people, you know, leadership and culture kind of with case studies. Then one around accommodations and universal design. And then I think a final around individualized support. We'll have to make some decisions exactly on how to, where exactly to divide those three, because there's a lot of overlap there, but how does that sound? That's sound good to people? We missing anything important, you think?
I think that sounds fabulous. Sorry, this is Lori. Thank you.
Great. Great. So we'll work with that and let's move forward with that and see how it goes. That seems great. So in terms of, I guess so the next thing would be looking for dates to do this. So realistically, we're sort of probably in, we take a couple months to get people and so forth. March, so we'd be looking at March, April, probably. I mean,
yeah, and I'll pull up the WIOA webinar schedule
thanks.
right now to see which weeks at that time we have available. Because I just got the updated spreadsheet. Okay, let's see. So it looks like we're totally open in March.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm get my calendar up here too. So I know the dates. So what, these are Wednesdays at what time are they?
10 to 11:30 on Wednesdays. I would say maybe avoid the last week of March because I think people tend to go on spring break around that time.
Right, the 22nd is right now a state rehabilitation council meeting. So
Okay.
that's probably.
What
So we'd
about
be
the
looking-
8th?
Yeah, I can't do the 8th, so the 15th.
I kind of think we should go into April if that's possible, because the 15th, the next day, is an IWIB meeting. So I know, you know, our staff usually hosts the webinars, and I have a feeling we're going to be traveling to
Oh,
get ready
right.
to the IWIB meeting that day.
All right.
Unless we wanted to do the 1st, March 1st.
The 1st seems soon.
Yeah. Okay. How about April?
Okay.
The other
let's see
option
what-
too is if we wanted to do March, there is a possibility, depending on meeting schedules, that we could do a 1 to 2:30 time. We usually avoid those, but it is possible if that was needed.
How about the 19th of April? Because again, you have spring break rolls for some people into that week of the previous week. So the 19th.
April 19th looks good.
Yeah, so
Well-
far that looks good for me, but there's a potential that I could be out. I won't know until like right then. So, but
Okay.
I'm open that day right now.
Okay, well, why don't we claim that date then? And I mean, unless we do with the 26th, that's the 26th, that's the other option would be to do the 26th.
I can put both because on the form we have to request 2 dates anyway.
Okay,
They ask
Okay,
for 2 options,
great.
so I can just request both and then they'll give us whichever one, just in case. I mean, I think I have the most up-to-date info, but just in case one is full. And
Great.
do we want to look at the other dates, like a date in May and a date in June, or do we want to just do one at a time for now?
well, I mean, I think it's probably worth sort of starting to get stuff on the calendar if we can.
Okay. I think I would encourage May and July because June, we're going to have a CPTP meeting that is disability focused and we're going to have an IWIB meeting.
Hmm.
So I think avoiding June would be beneficial.
Okay, great. So, but the 24th of May?
Yeah, I think May 24th or the following one, which is what, the 31st? Either one of those would be good for me.
Okay, we have to give 2 dates, so let's give those 2.
And then you said July.
We want to just, we've been doing sort of one of the last 2 Wednesdays, so
Yeah.
we do the 19th and the 26th.
That works for me so far. Yeah, and I think that's good because a lot of people will take off the week of the 4th.
I missed the previous bullet points. I do want to talk about potential speakers for particularly for this first one. Culture case studies. So Pat, do you think somebody from SPR would be interested and available talking about that? I mean, they've done a lot there.
Well, the truth is, Dave, I'd be the real expert at SPR.
Well, then how about you? Would you be willing to participate?
Well, I would. I feel somewhat awkward speaking as deliberately as I do these days. You know, I feel somewhat as though I would impact the flow, but I certainly do it, and if others felt that was fine.
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. I think you communicate perfectly well. So I think it would be 100%. But and I think you do. I mean, you have a long-term perspective on this. You've done a lot of work in this area, so I do think you have a lot to contribute.
I certainly feel fairly informed as you and I have spoken, Dave. I certainly experientially I believe experienced a lot on the private side, and hopefully that would bring some value.
Great. Oh, absolutely.
SPR is I'd say a small company, and that's probably what you're thinking of, Dave.
I wasn't sure if it fell into small or mid-size. I wasn't sure
Yeah,
where they were these days.
Kind of tweener, but I'd say operates as a small.
Hmm. Great. So we're brainstorming here, so we'll get some ideas. Bazaar is I think would be another one where they've done a lot of cultural work. What do you think about like a Walgreens, like a big company? Walgreens has done a lot.
Yeah, I just, this is Pat, guys, I just have not been at the pulse of what Walgreens has done over the past decade or so, but that's not to say they haven't been very actively engaged and supportive. They certainly were one of the leaders early.
Yep. EY is another one who, particularly around neurodiversity, has gotten has done a lot, and it's gotten pretty vocal about what they've been doing. I know some people there as well.
Right.
I'm also trying to see if we can get a mix of different kinds of roles. So, I mean, the SBR is a technology services company, so that's kind of one type of roles. Bazaar is more sort of warehouse and operations jobs. That's
Right.
a different kind of thing. EY and Walgreens has a little bit of a mix because they have some retail jobs as well as
Right.
warehouse as well as corporate. EY would be more sort of corporate, again, more like SPR kind of business services type roles.
Has EHS or DRS put out a grant recently for workforce training? Because those grantees may be some who would be receptive to sharing their journey also.
Yeah, that's a good idea, like to look at some of the workforce.
I could invite someone. This is Michelle from Advocate Aurora Health. So we could have healthcare, maybe another sector if you'd like.
That would be a good sector to have.
Very.
You know, both some of the people that have been doing some of the work with apprenticeships, those have been, again, a lot of cultural work required to sort of get those programs to be successful. So there's Aon and Accenture.
Right.
Both have done a lot there.
And is the vision that this would be sort of similar to the panel where we do like each presenter gets 10 minutes to overview their company and then it would be a panel discussion, or setup wise?
I think we would do something probably pretty similar to that, to give people an opportunity to talk about their journey and the successes and how they've established culture. And then we would have a series of questions for them. I think the general consensus was that format worked well, gave people some structured time to talk, but also gave us some time to have a more informal conversation. So I think if we look at SPR, Advocate, those both sound, I think, really good, like solid sort of sectors to bring in. So we'd be looking for more of a Aurora. I don't know if we would consider Aurora big or medium, but I wonder if I'm trying to. I saw something about maybe Amazon. I don't know what they've done. Bazaar, certainly. I'm trying to think of something now that's a little bit more like a retail or a distribution type roles. I mean, we have a client that has done a lot with this called Suncast. It's a manufacturing company. Possibility. And Bazaar, I think Bazaar is also a possibility. Do you know what kind of roles Tim Engstrom has, what they've created in there? Because we had I space his name now, on our last webinar from Bazaar. And then yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about with the new facilities with?
Yeah, with Tim Engstrom's there too. I forget the name of the company.
Yeah, I have it written down in some notes. I could get the name of the company he's at now. I mean, we could still work with the Bazaar.
Yeah. Well, let's
we could get the owner from the Bazaar to talk.
Yep.
About everything. Mm-hmm.
And he's very passionate about culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah, we have a few success stories from there too, so they're a good one.
And then I will talk to again, I'll find it. Tim Engstrom is Garrett's boss there. I need to get in touch with him anyway, so I'll talk to him and see what they're doing there. I'm not sure what they have really in place at this point. I know he moved into that role sort of specifically to try to create something there, so not sure how far along he is to have something to talk about. But yeah, so let me try to check off with him here pretty quickly, and then if Pat's willing, then if we could get someone from Advocate, that would be great. And then I'll see if Tim from wherever he's from, and if not, then we can look at the Bazaar. And
we could also look at Northwestern Medical if we can't get Advocate, because we do a lot of work with them with Project Search. And they've done a lot of cultural work too.
Great.
We have Project Search in 3 Northwestern hospitals.
Oh, no kidding.
Possibly 4, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
It's growing really wonderfully.
Yeah, and Project Search is a really sort of comprehensive
right.
solution. Yep.
Yeah, like I said, they've done a lot of cultural work through their HR.
Yeah, this sounds terrific. So let's sort of connect with Advocate and with Tim soon, and then we'll go to either Northwestern or Bazaar as backups.
Great.
Fantastic. Cool. So we got about 5 minutes here. Let me see what was, forget what's next on the agenda. We can skip that, I think. Yeah, we've been looking, we've been tentatively assigned the June 2023 CPTP meeting, which is, I guess, another reason to skip June for us. One of the thoughts I had here was the possibility of whether we could do something downstate, just as a sort of locationally diverse thing. But other than that, the idea would be to meet the entire Career Pathways group, to meet somewhere, and then we would probably have some sort of a field trip. We'd meet, and then we'd have some sort of a field trip in the afternoon to a disability employment oriented location. And we went to Misericordia, or we did Misericordia virtually. Some people went down to Kewanee back in September. There's kind of examples where the meeting was held, and then there was also some other visits associated with that. I've talked to some of the folks, Tony Furman and others in Southern Illinois, who have some ideas. LaDonna, I know you're I know it's a big state, but you're in the general area also.
So are you looking at by downstate? Are you talking how far downstate? Like, are you
I live
talking
in
like,
DuPage County, so anything south of
Yeah.
I-80.
okay,
I'm
because
just kidding.
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
right. I know it's Chicago and south of I-80, right?
But no, I was hoping we could find something downstate, east,
Okay.
St. Louis,
St. Louis,
Alton.
Dalton. Okay, I can get
Um,
in touch with with the ABCs, with the, my counterparts in that area, Region 5, which is the furthest south, and Region 4, which is next furthest south. And just see what they can come up with, because I know there are a lot of things, like you said, East St. Louis. It's got a lot of manufacturing and like, more career, what I would call career pathways heavy,
mhm.
obviously. But there's also bigger businesses in some of those other cities as well. So
I think
I can touch base with them and find out.
yeah, that would be great.
And you, okay, so it would be like a field trip in June sometime?
Yeah.
Okay.
Molly,
All right.
do you know, is it going to be the June IWIB meeting in Collinsville?
That's the plan right now. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay,
I don't-
so it would be in conjunction with that, probably?
So I think we had been, I'm looking at my calendar right now. The IWA meeting is Thursday, the 15th. So we were looking at like the 14th or the 16th, doing it like the day
Okay.
before or after. I think we had talked about the 14th originally.
But if people are going already to Collinsville, we should probably, do whatever matches up with that.
Okay. I'll get in touch with Susan and find out what suggestions she might have.
The IWIB, the IWIB's the 15th. June 15th.
Okay,
So probably the we'd probably look at the 14th. Conceivably the morning of the 16th, but probably really the 14th would be better. Great. I'd like to, so that'd be great, Lori, if you could get back to us with that. And then just want to respect everybody's time. So it's 11 o'clock. What else do we have here? Molly, was that I think that was the last major issue for today. Yep. And then Molly sent out invites to the meetings, and you should all have those on your calendar. If not, please get in touch with her and she can forward those to you. And thank you, everybody. This was super productive. I feel really good about the progress we made on the webinar. I feel like we've got something really good to do both in April, but also love the idea of having 2 more where we can hit some of the other important topics. So thanks everybody for participating today, and we'll talk. Have a great week.
thanks, guys.
Steve.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.